Hello, everybody. This is Captain Sweep Ann,
Yogi Shambu.
and this is the Inside Scoop. And what you have here are two perspectives so different, so unique, that when they come together, they throttle your mind with a new way of seeing something that is actually going to build the new paradigm. So here we are. What is it? It's March 13th to 19th. Lots been going on. There's a war in the Ukraine. There's inflation going throughout the land like some disease that nobody's talking about. There are truckers trapped in a prison waiting to get out while trucks are being sold, and prime ministers, in my mind, are going insane. Where did the truckers go that were traveling towards Washington, D.C.? What's happening in Copenhagen? What's happening around the world? There's only two people who really know how this all fits together. One is me, and the other is Yogi Shambu. Mr. Shambu, what do you think about this week? What is the most important thing that you want to point your finger to?
We have digital IDs that are rolling out the possibility of digital IDs, not just the possibilities, but the propositions of them. We have a prime minister overseas who is making a whole bunch of declarations, and we have a whole bunch of the larger figures in the world really laughing at our prime minister, saying, "You have no right. You have no right to be making your grandiose declarations of democracy." And also we have truckers. We have a lot of truckers that are in DC with a whole bunch of shenanigans. And the biggest thing is media blackout. No one is talking. No one is covering this. They seem to learn from the Canadian convoy that this is the way you deal with it. You just don't show it.
I have a book, The Real Anthony Fauci. I think this is a book that everyone on the planet should actually have. We've gone through 2 years. We've gone through 2 years where we can now look at the evidence. We can look at the data. We can look at what occurred before we were in it, before we didn't know, because we could not distinguish what was real from what was unreal based upon the corporate and the media and the government interpretation of reality. They said it was this way, according to certain projections, and then they did this, and then that affected this, and now 2 years later, boom, this guy. Do you know that Yogi, is the highest paid employee of the United States? And do you know the budget he controls? This one man divvies out over $7 billion. $7 billion. And so all those people and all those institutions that get that money pay homage to him, right? It's like they control trillions. They control so much money, and then they put it towards all these people that support their reality. But deep down, it's a juice. All these people are getting rich. We're getting wiped out. The middle class is getting wiped out. And a guy like this, who should be in jail, who should be probably lynched, who's a criminal, and this book proves it. And I just wonder, like, from the average Canadian point of view, after 2 years, what do you think those people are who got vaccinated but didn't want to do it? And now, here we are. How do you think they're feeling about what has occurred?
There's something about trying to grapple with a decision that you've already made, and how do you feel comfortable with it over the long run. So we have a lot of new evidence coming up. We have the Canadian government has just launched their own vaccine adverse effect registry, and which is showing that there is something that is going on. Again, we have more side effects or more adverse reactions than any other vaccine in history, all of those vaccines put together in the first 6 months, the first year now, I guess, of this. And so there is enough evidence for people to be concerned. And so now people have the decision of leaning into that concern or actually comforting themselves with assuring propaganda or reports from the larger, from the establishment. And I just want to say that I believe that the largest problem with science now is that scientific institutions require funding. They require grants. And so if people are in a very difficult situation if you're a scientist, it is that you need the funding. You can't isolate yourself from the funding. And so what do? Do you actually go for stringent truth seeking? The mindset, the practice of science is that you must be a doubter. You must always be looking and looking and looking to deconstruct your own assertions and test it. Well, you're not going to have that if funding is involved. Funding is always at the it's so oftentimes at the root of the undoing of the scientific method. And we can see that with how the Pfizer trials were done, even. So much criticism. And so I'm super excited that you're diving into the real Anthony Fauci. There's over 1,200, I believe, footnotes, references to peer-reviewed papers, studies, reports. This is probably the most researched, referenced manual to come out in years. And so if people are calling it fake news, then they have to then justify why there is so much evidence that is backing it up. This is not just proclamation. This is reporting, which is so rarely done.
His book, like you say, I mean, it doesn't, they need white space. It's packed. Like it's overwhelming, but I can give a few of the data points. Here's one. The CDC, for example, owns 57 vaccine patents and spends 4.9 of its $12 billion annual budget as of 2019 buying and distributing vaccines. So the CDC, one of the most important organizations out there. And here, the FDA receives 45% of its budget from the pharmaceutical industry. So here we have, the most important organizations almost in the world today, and their money is linked to vaccines, and their money is linked to the pharmaceutical industry for their very existence and why they are there. They're not off from everything in a true regulation and looking through to see what goes through and what's going to work well. Pfizer and the FDA, their executives go back and forth. They work here and then they work here. And that's another way that the corporations and the governments are sort of so linked together. And it's so obvious. But it's not put there with the corporate media, because these are the reasons we have to question everything that we're seeing. These are the reasons. So they're not going to put forward that narrative. They're not going to put forward that information. But this book, right? Like if everybody read it, everyone went out there and read it, got their own copy, and then decided, okay, after reading that, then reassess the last 2 years. Reassess it.
For people, what was that? Just that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has really had a character assassination, a smear campaign put out toward him. But all that they can say really is you're disseminating false news. And so they're just claims. And if you look at the character of this person for his entire career has championed us as the people, has championed against corporations opportunistically uh, ruining, spoiling this world. You know, the work that he's done to save the rivers in North America from the mining companies just dumping their heavy metals straight into the rivers, killing countless rivers. He has been the person that has been the most effective in actually launching true court cases against also the vaccine manufacturers, and has won. This isn't someone who has just made a lot of noise and not won. He has won. And why has he won? Because when it comes down to it, when you're in a Supreme Court, you actually have the space to be able to have your arguments truly tested, truly weighed against the defense. And he is usually on the winning side of this, which is showing us a lot. And he is doing this not because this is an easy fight. He didn't want to get into vaccines, but he found, once mothers came to him saying, there is something going on, you're concerned with heavy metals in children, well, shall we look at why the aggregates, the parts of the immune system that are being agitated by heavy metals being included with the vaccines, and what are the allergic reactions that are forming when and after you have a vaccine. This is something, and again, you know, he does not say that he is anti-vaccine. He does take vaccines. He has taken vaccines throughout his life, but he is vaccine hesitant. And more accurately, he said he is for healthy or effective vaccines. And so you cannot slander. If there's one thing that people can take out of this conversation is, shall we stop the name calling? And shall we actually form a radar? Let's tune our radar into when people are just making blanket statements to shut people down, and actually start looking into the facts. If you disagree with Robert F. Kennedy, you know, or even someone like Joe Rogan, do yourself and all of us a favor and actually take in the material and then form a decision. So that's, yeah.
I mean, so true. I'll just bring out some more facts from the book. And again, as I said to you before, that many of the things which were brought up, you have brought up. I've heard you say these things in our shows. And so I think that your radar is very good to pointing to these significant bits of data that tell us what the story is. So here, the average age of death from COVID in the UK was 82.4, which was above the average lifespan. So I know that you have brought that up. And that's you know, a huge parameter, limit of, you know, they use death, fear of death as the most important point. And we have to protect ourselves from death. And the only way we can is with this vaccine. And, you know, all of the other methodologies were not allowed. Early diagnosis and giving a methodology was not allowed. It was taken out of the game. And that's something which he, in this book, which is one of the biggest points, is just like, there were other solutions, but because of the Emergency Act, you can't have another solution if you're bringing the fast track for the vaccine, right? So it's so important that they had to crush anything saying that the early procedures were working. And then all these doctors now around the world are saying these worked, and now we have the evidence. And so 58 million Americans are out of work. 1/3 of teens and young adults reported worsening mental health during the pandemic. In 2020, workers lost 3.7 trillion, while billionaires gained 3.9 trillion. 493 individuals became new billionaires, and 8 million Americans dropped below the poverty line. 8 million people. And, here we have this wave of devastation. We have all of this information saying what has happened because of lockdowns and because of all of these measures they brought in based on data that was not true. Brought in these measures that just basically took out our whole freaking civilization. Why? That's just a step. That's just a step. And what is the next step? The next step is digital ID. The next step is cashless society. The next step is 5G monitoring everything. These steps, if we don't see this step and everything that happened for what it is and what it was, we're not prepared for what's coming. And what's coming are stricter measures. And if we don't learn to fight, if we don't learn to defend ourselves, we don't learn how to win in law, in court. And that's why I think justice is so important, that Canadians just have to learn how to win in court. And now from the millions, pound the government, pound the bureaucracy, beat the living crap out of these people with complaints and with litigation and with paperwork, because that is how they instill their false governance system on us, through paperwork. We have all these movies and there's always these guns and everyone's always shooting, but at the base of all of that, the way you win is you win in court, and that's what justice did. And that's why he was so important as a guest last week.
Mm. It seems that the skill of being an effective protester and the skill of being an effective representative in court, both of these they work hand in hand, because when you have a protest that draws attention and draws the hearts of the people, then you start to see that the court can be affected in that way. And I am praying for strength, for clarity every single day now, because I feel myself very clearly when I'm zoning out, when I'm delaying jumping into some action that I need to. I'm becoming so aware of that, and things are happening so quickly. And as you said, one thing is building upon another, and this plan, it seems, is rolling out rather quickly. And I think that people are getting lost in the weeds of if people are meaning to do it. Well, let's not talk about what if people are intending it, and just look at what is the actual effect of this. If you shut down people's bank accounts when it was legal to fund a movement after the fact, and no one actually balks at that, the average Canadian is going, oh, well, yeah, that's crazy that happened, but oh, well, let's go watch, Euphoria or something like that. That's a TV show. I'm not sure if but then we are giving them the sign that they can just move on to the next step, because we're not pushing back. And we have to look at, if you are there going, well, thank God we're not Russia, thank God we're not, Saudi Arabia. These are all comparisons that are weakening our ability to see what we are losing on our front, on our dime, and on our watch. Our country is changing before our eyes, and the majority of people are not doing anything about it. That's my sadness in my heart speaking this week. Yeah. Because we still have unvaccinated people not allowed to get on a train, but they're allowed to get on a streetcar, which is a train, but not going very far. We are still allowed to have people crowding around the avocados at the grocery store, but not allowed to be in one of the most highly ventilated modes of transportation, which is a plane. You have people who are separated from their families, and I don't know if Canadians, or if people are actually extending their hearts, putting themselves in the position of the unvaccinated, and actually caring that that's still going on. We still have a segregated society right now.
I think we got to move from commentary into action. And if anyone is watching this right now and you're moved by the words, contact us. We're going to be putting together plans regarding media teams and getting an understanding of what that lawful process is, what documentation that we need, and then how to go about going into the court systems. And so I think this week you learned a lot about at least how we feel, how we think, and we're looking to team up. We're looking to connect with other groups and other people, and we have tools and we have our own set of resources, and we're willing to share, and we're looking for other organizations to share, because I think it's a big unitive effort, because we the people are sort of the majority by a lot, and we need to learn how to self-organize. We need to learn how to support ourselves outside of that government corporate infrastructure that basically is running things, but they've shown themselves basically, to my mind, to be criminals. And so to protect ourselves, to create strength, we need to unite. We need to unite through online infotech, and that's what's available now. There's all these platforms, but how do you use them, and how do you connect, and how do you put teams together? And that's what we're working on right now.
Yes, it there is a battlefront in every neighborhood in this land that is going on right now everywhere, and we can go on and on and on about how we feel about it, but in fact, how are we going to show up, and how are we going to show up next week? Like, really, as Ralph Nader said, if we dedicate the same amount of time that we would our hobby, involving ourselves in the actual solution, then this whole world is going to have a chance to be saved. I'm paraphrasing him, of course. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good ending to this week's show. We've brought a lot to your attention, and we're asking you to now to participate. And so you can contact Yogi Shambu, or you can contact Captain Sweet, and we'll see about getting people organized onto teams. So great to see you this week. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yogi Shambu.
Thank you.
Do you have anything you want to say to end this?
The facts are going to save us, and acting on the facts. Let's look at how you had India, say that they want to do their own investigation into the effectiveness of Pfizer's shot before they issued an emergency act, which is what Pfizer just tried to do. And Pfizer turned around, tucked their tail between their legs, and left. They refused that, or so if India can do it, we can all do it, and it's with simple facts and showing up.
Okay. See everyone.
Okay.
Have a great week. See you next week.
Bye.